The Daddy Letters. Season 2. Letter 45. Music Traditions in the Church. Part 4.
Dear son of Abraham, I promise to continue discussing musical genres. I hope you find the subject as interesting as I do. I think music, as common as it is one of the most mysterious gifts God has given us to enjoy, and it is far more complex than one might think as we simply play our favorite MP3 song. Start studying music theories, and you soon discover this is no minor creation, and one that only an omnipotent mind could have conceived of. A song, or musical tune, is an organized structure of musical elements, including tempo, which is the speed of the tune, mode, which is the musical scale, melody, which is the linear succession of tones or notes, duration, the period for which a note is held, pitch, the relative position on a musical scale, harmony, the combination of two or more notes coinciding to produce a new sound, rhythm, the pattern of the beat, loudness, the amplitude of the sounds, dynamic range, the distance between the softest and loudest sound, instrumentation, the personalities of the mechanical and biological voices, performance, the conventional or unconventional use of the instruments, and lyrics, the message-giving prose or poetry. Depending upon how the song or music is structured with these elements, it will convey a particular attitude, spiritual disposition, and general mood, and music pieces that project similar attitudes can be grouped into a genre. The study of music genres, and how to identify them, is complicated and hotly debated, but I believe this is a good working definition for most of us. Each musical genre employs these elements in common ways, so that an identifiable category of music emerges, identifiable by its mental, psychological, and spiritual impact. It is important to differentiate between the emotion a song evokes, and the genre within which the song makes you feel the emotion. For example, I can experience the emotion of romance from a song within the sophisticated classical genre, but also experience romantic emotions from a song in the rebellious rock and roll genre. Each musical genre allows listeners to access most of the same emotions, however each genre provokes some emotional spectrums better than others. For example, heavy metal transmits feelings of uninhibited anger better than other genres because of its loud and aggressive structure. Christian hymns are not structured to elicit romantic emotions. Each genre is built beneath overarching attitudes, atmospheres, moods and temperaments, but inside the attitudinal framework of the genre, many different emotions may be experienced. The expert, Peter van der Merwe, said that genres should be defined as pieces of music that share a certain style or basic musical language. I think that is a pretty good definition. There are over 6,000 musical genres and subgenres, cataloged by Spotify. However, there are a few main, or umbrella genres that we typically encounter. These are classical, pop, rock, metal, punk, jazz, R&B, soul, funk, hip-hop, blues, country, electronic, folk, new age, and Christian. Each genre is marked by latent psychological processes or attitudes, typically traceable to cultural phenomenon. And each of these supergenres have thrown off hundreds of subgenres, or variations of psychosocial dispositions. At this point, examining a few genres might be helpful. Classical music is structured around attitudes of sophistication, control, complexity, conservatism, regimentation, and changing moods. There is little room for the individuality of the musician to be expressed. Conformity is the expectation. But bear in mind that within the sophistication of the classical genre, one may experience emotions of joy, sadness, love, hate, excitement, fear, loathing, tranquility, or hope. However, these emotions are experienced underneath a sense of the restraint and control that is projected by the classical music structure. Rock music is structured around attitudes of fun, rebellion, revelry, sensuality, sassiness, freedom, and mischief. Yet, the same emotions of love, sadness, joy, or excitement that may be experienced in classical music, may also be experienced in rock. But because of rock music's technical structure, emotions experienced from it are less restrained. Heavy metal is grown from a psychological disposition of anarchy, anti-authoritarianism, anger, discontent, and aggressiveness. Upon examination, it is not hard to determine the overarching attitudes of the remaining musical genres, but I will leave that to you, to think out on your own. The primary importance of understanding the attitudinal orientation of these genres is that almost all genres influence the music of the church, and their intrinsic attitudes should be kept in mind when selecting the hymnody of the congregation. When it comes to the attitudes in church music, important questions to ask are: do we exalt the feelings we get from music, or does the music cause in us a desire to exalt God? Do we exult in the emotions, or do the emotions open our hearts to exult in God? Do we glorify our performances, or do our performances represent our best attempts to give God our best because He is the giver of all skill, talent, and ability? Do we come to the hymns to be entertained, or do we seek to give our attention to God, and receive His to us? Does the music raise up sensual longings in our souls, or does it raise up in us a desire for God? I respect the awesome responsibility and difficulty church leaders face in discerning the hymnody that is appropriate for the local body. To do so, they must wade through gray waters, seeking trail markers along paths flooded by confusion and conflict. Song leaders like you, son of Abraham, must test a song's lyrics against scripture, and a song's music against attitude and psychosocial impact. If this is not done carefully, we might find ourselves singing lies, or overcome with unconsecrated attitudes. It is easy to forget that worship services are not for the purpose of entertaining, they are for adoring God together with fellow believers. But this does not mean that our songs must be emotionless. That would be a pendulum swing too far. As long as the emotion is the result, and not the aim of the music, we are in safe territory. As long as we are not manipulating people through song, but rather drawing them to God through it, we sail safe musical waters. There is nothing wrong with a hand-clapping, foot-stomping, body-swaying Christian song that is sung unto God. The scripture tells us to sing to ourselves unto God, not to ourselves for ourselves. Musical genres conjure up attitudes and intentions, moving the listener to assume the attitudes encoded in the genre structure. Musical genres mysteriously draw us into their tonally coded objectives, whether it is to party or to praise, rebel or obey, praise or lust. Music gives poetry wings, making ideas fly into our spirits and perch on our hearts. The words carry the message, and the music supplies the punctuation. Creation tells us a lot about God according to the book of Psalms. In that regard, the attributes of music reveal many of the attributes of its creator. God's love of relationship is expressed in the orderly relationship and procession of musical notes, each introducing itself into space and time, preparing the way for the note to follow, while reflecting back upon the ancestral notes that linger in our minds. God's attribute of fellowship is demonstrated in music, as spoken of in Acts 2, verse 44, which says,
"And all who believed were together, and had all things in common."
In well-written hymns, all musical notes, sounds, and structural elements of a tune have all things in common, and together they incarnate the intended emotionally reinforced message in the mind of the hearer. God is a God of order, and music is an orderly arrangement of many structural elements, coordinated to move through space and time to deliver a payload of emotionally charged thoughts and ideas to the listener. The church is a community of people, and music is a community of sounds. A single person cannot constitute a community, nor can a single note constitute music. People of many backgrounds unite in assembly with the shared purpose of worshiping God, just as musical voices, instruments, and elements of different backgrounds are assembled for the shared purpose of expressing thoughts and feelings through music. Music speaks in the voice of timing, just like that of the beating heart, or a panting horse in full stride. The voice of music changes befitting the emotion. Musical repetition and cadence instill a sense of expectation and security. The human need for variety is satisfied in the changing movements of a classical tune, or the bridge and refrain of a gospel song. The Trinity is unified, the Church seeks unity, and the universe is orderly and exquisitely unified by God. Music exhibits these same divine attributes, taking random sounds, words, and tones, and then unifying them with timbre, rhythm, rhyme, and lyrical meaning, so that like the Trinity, there is complete fellowship of sound and thought. Musical genres are typically identified by their harmonic or chord progressions. This is a very complicated subject, but suffice it to say that a chord progression expresses the order and timing with which certain notes are played, and each genre has identifiable chord progressions. Genre identification is as subtle and nuanced as identifying apple varieties. Detecting apple varieties cannot always be accomplished visually. The visual data has to be aggregated with taste, texture, size, shape, and color, and even then it's still not easy. The same thing is true of music genres. Chord progression is important, but that must be taken into account with other elements, such as instrumentation and rhythm. Speaking of apples, your girlfriend, my daughter, as you know, is a bit of a health food nut, and is always bringing me healthy dishes to try. Well, she brought me a raw apple pie a few days ago. A vegan dessert. I am not sure you should use the words raw and pie in the same sentence, but that is what she brought me. Just like you didn't want to try her cheese apple pie, I wasn't really interested in trying a raw one. But just as I encouraged you to do, I gave in and gave it a try. She asked me what I thought of it, and I replied, I think it is a unique dish that your boyfriend would appreciate. So this is a heads up that a raw apple pie is coming your way. We will talk about it after you try it. I'm going to break off now, but I promise to finish this analysis of church music traditions in my 5th letter on the subject. I look forward to seeing you soon. Ruel.